Welcome. This is your host, Heidi Watson, on Two Tier Canada, the podcast where we explore the ups and downs of private practice in a diverse network of health professionals. Hello, and thanks for listening. This month's episode, I wanted to tell you a little bit more about what this podcast series is going to be about and a little bit about my own private practice. The goal of this show is to highlight how diverse private practice can be, how you can work in a clinic or community, how you can have contracts or individual fee-for-service, or you can even just specialize in community development and non-for-profit work. Already we have a really great lineup of allied health professionals who are going to speak with us. They're SLPs, dietitians, massage therapists, OTs, and PTs, a really great group of people. The reason that we chose Two Tier Canada as the name for this podcast is to highlight that there is a two-tier health system in Canada, even though you don't really hear about it. Public health and not having to pay for healthcare is one of the foundations that Canada has come to be built upon. And when you speak to people about private healthcare in Canada, they really bristle at the idea and really dislike the idea of paying for services. But it's very interesting because two-tiered health has already been in Canada for many years. It looks differently than how you would think it looks. Sorry for any grumbly baby sounds in the background. We've got a little munchkin with us on the podcast today. If he gets out of hand, we'll pause and restart. So yes, as I was saying, a lot of people really bristle at the idea of private care in Canada. But it is really rare for a private service in Canada still to be paid out of pocket from the Canadian citizen. So private care looks differently in Canada than it might look in other countries. Many of private practitioners are paid in a public manner. So, for example, you could have a contract with a school division, and so that school division's funding may be public or private, and so it's not coming out of the parents' payments right away in a direct way. And so you can see how the parent wouldn't view that service as a private service because they're not the ones paying for it. So then another way that it happens too is in dentistry. So dentistry is a really common private practice across Canada. You pay your dentist fee first, and then you get reimbursed from your benefits package. If you have a benefits package that is large enough, a lot of people can bill the benefits package directly. So that is a benefits package that is supported from an employer rather than supported from public health. And so that is another example of a private practice that is not publicly serviced, yet people don't really think of it that way, and it's just not highlighted in like common discussion that these are private services. So that's just how two-tier Canada is without people really realizing. So another thing with private service in Canada is that private services are really supporting public services. So I'll just go into this a little bit more to help it make a little bit more sense. So let's say you have a public physio service. They are going to be occasionally swamped throughout the year with, let's say, post-surgical rehab. That is high priority. That needs to be serviced right away. Like people really need positive outcomes after surgery, and you don't want your public tax dollars going towards a surgery, then there's no public service to rehab after that surgery and have that outcome fail. You don't want to get a hip replacement and then get a stuck hip because you didn't have access to physiotherapy. So those are high priority for the public physio system. So now let's say you have a physio who works privately and they don't like to do post-surgical rehab. They can choose to have a private practice that maybe is around injury rehabilitation and preventative care. So what that practice has done now is they've taken immediate pressure off of that public system. So that public system is really responsible for that post-surgical work, but there's still people getting injured, and there's still people who have maybe chronic pain and things like that that need services. So if you have a swamped public service, those people who do need the care are now waiting for months at a time. Now, if this private clinic pops up, then that private clinic is taking that pressure off of the public system. And then, especially with preventative care programs, they're really important too, because not only do they take immediate pressure off the public system, but they are also taking pressure off in the future, as the preventative care is preventing future injuries and even potentially future surgeries. So we all know that healthcare can be very reactive in its programs, and you're seeing across Canada programs in public health popping up as more preventative care to decrease the amount of chronic health conditions, to decrease the amount of future surgeries. But those people that need those services now still need those services now. And so you can't have the public sector completely shift to preventative care, and that's why it's really important for these private clinics to be coming and popping up and providing those services as well. So you can kind of see how there's a relationship between the two. So private care really fills the gaps, and it also really provides specialty services. So another role of public health is to serve the majority, but there's a lot of times where you're going to require in your lifetime really specialty services. And so the problem with these things is it's hard to fund specialty services where you need to be funding large common disorders. And so these public services can pop up as private clinicians that have really subspecialties. Let's say an occupational therapist that works with really rare childhood disorders, or different, like a dietitian that does different dietary conditions that aren't very common, right? Or for even dietary for weight loss, right? Because that's another thing that the public system can't really specialize into. And so that's another way that the public health is supported by these private specialty services. Now, these private specialty services, again, are not commonly paid for by the client specifically. So they may be paid for out of pocket from the client initially, and then a receipt is given with the license number that can be submitted to the benefits program. So then they get a refund. There's lots of public and private programs, like different foundations and organizations like that, that people can apply to for even more funding when their benefits run out. Then as well, there are tax returns, and so at the end of the year, the client submits these receipts as medical expenses, and then they can get a tax break. These are all very common ways that people get a little bit more funding for their needs. So really, the point of this practice is to highlight and shed light on these underacknowledged group of allied health professionals that are really making a difference in Canada in supporting the public network. And one of the things that we work towards is creating a network between these practitioners, and so we really want to tell you how they're practicing, how they started, how they got to where they are now, things like what they would tell themselves if they were to start again, and really how they make a difference in the work that they do. We even have a few people that we're going to interview that do not charge and are just focusing on community development and things like that. Just a quick interruption here. Two-Tier Canada has been brought to you by the Electronic Health Information System, an electronic health record made specifically for private practitioners. Check out our demo at e-his.ca. Now, let's get back to this month's interview. So for the second half of the podcast, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my private practice. I went to school at the University of Manitoba, and I graduated in 2012. I chose occupational therapy kind of by accident. I had rolled my ankle really bad and ended up in physiotherapy and thought that that was what I wanted to do. And when I went to go and apply, I saw this mysterious occupational therapy link underneath the physio link and clicked on it instead and read a little bit about the profession and how you can change your specialty every year and never run out of specialties, and thought, this is what I want to do. And that is still what I absolutely love about occupational therapy, is that I can do so many different things with it, and it's so flexible, and it just changes every year, and there's so much potential for the profession. I really love it. I went into private practice in 2013, so pretty quick out of school. I always knew that I wanted to work in private practice even before I started my master's program. I had done my undergrad, and I had joined the Canadian Forces for a little while and was in the Navy and the Navy Reserves. And I really did like that, but when I kind of met that physio and saw the private business there and learned more about private practice, I was like, yeah, that's definitely what I want to do. That's the kind of stuff I want to do. And so when I went into the master's program, I knew I wanted to go into private practice on that very first day. So it was really nice being able to get out of school and kind of start moving that direction right away. I got a job in public health to help pay off my student loans, but definitely started to transition into private practice right away. I worked on my business plan a little bit and then started to make a plan. My business model at first was a kind of like a massage therapy business model. I had gotten an extra designation in manual lymph drainage. So I ran a program for the health region for people affected with lymphedema, but the program had restrictions in hours and services, and so it had to be restricted also in who could access the program. It had to be people with a lymphedema diagnosis. And so I saw the opportunity to create a side business for people who didn't have lymphedema, who still had swelling and needed services. And so it's a type of massage technique. And so I got a massage table and put it in my car and drove around my home community and would take it into people's homes to help them manage their swelling. So that was kind of how my business model had started, and it's definitely evolved over the years that I've been practicing. It changed so that I started working with third-party payers like SGI is our auto insurance and workers' comp. Here in Saskatchewan, I had a couple clients through them. So again, going to work sites and doing sort of like functional assessments and stuff like that. And then I started to kind of dabble into pediatrics. And so just one-on-one pediatrics through parents that I would meet in the community. That then evolved into working for some school divisions, and that evolved to partnering up with another health professional, a speech path, and working pediatrics in a clinic setting. And so that's kind of how my business model started and how it kind of has changed over the years in practice. I really like new things and the flexibility and a new challenge above all. And so whenever people approach me with something new that they need help with, I'm usually all about trying it out and doing something different. My business has definitely had an impact on my family. A very positive one. When I first decided to really go full-time into private practice and decrease my public health job to 1 day a week, it was a really big discussion with my partner, and if he was okay with supporting me while it grew and that kind of thing. It took off pretty quick, and so it wasn't it didn't impact us financially when you're starting out that private practice is such a risk, and you don't know how many clients you're going to get, and you could have no one, and you could make no money, and it's such a big worry, and you view it as like a big risk, and so it was a big discussion, but it was fine, and we got clients right away, and it just really took off really well when I decided to go full-time into the private practice. And so then there was another impact on our family. We decided that we wanted to have a baby, and then the question of mat leave comes up, and so we had to decide if I was going to go back into public health full time so that we could get a mat leave, or if I would stay private. And after all the work we had done and all the clients we had met and the people that we were working with, we just decided that it was better to stay private and support all of those people that we had really grown and really worked with for so long. So I took a lot of time off in the summer, since it was kind of going to be the last summer before kids, and then worked really hard in the fall before our baby arrived, and was able to fund a mat leave from just that little bit of work that we did, and we had a little bit of savings from that, so it's really, really good. I'm too much of a workaholic for a full year of mat leave anyways, so it wasn't that we funded a full year of mat leave just from my little business, but definitely 5 months covered comfortably so that I could be at home with baby. So yeah, there are very much positives, impacts on the family, and a few risks to things that are not quite as orthodox as possibly other families. I have never felt trapped in my business. I am pretty good at scheduling when I want to work and when I don't want to work. I'm pretty good at taking my vacation and days off when I'm feeling a little bit tired and that I don't want to work. And so I also don't practice in a clinic, and so I feel very free not having to go to a specific building every day. I really like going to people's homes, working in the community, and working in other businesses, and so like going to other people's clinics to do like just clients when they need, rather than having a clinic building of my own. I definitely prefer that, and I think that gets rid of that feeling trapped in my business. I don't feel a slave to my business, or that I have to dedicate certain time even though there's no clients or things like that. So I do work with others in my private practice, but I do not practice with employees. So I am terrible at doing my reports, and I am terrible at doing my charts and things like that. So I definitely work with subcontractors who are editors and medical transcriptionists, and they make my life super amazingly easy. I also work with other health professionals who are in their own practices, and we refer to each other, kind of thing. And so I don't have employees, but I'm definitely not alone. I have lots of other people that are around and supporting my business. I also work with accountants and lawyers as well for doing like my taxes and having any sort of like looking over my legal forms and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't feel alone. I definitely have lots of other people working with me, but I don't have employees in my private practice. So my future dreams for my business would be kind of continuing down the path that I'm on, kind of continuing with that organic growth and just kind of following what comes our way. I like being in the southeast here of Saskatchewan. I like being away from like the hustle and bustle of a larger urban center, and just kind of being involved in the community and helping out where people need. I think that helping the community become more aware of what occupational therapy is and what kind of like work that we can do and how we can help might also be a future direction for my business, just to diversify my practice a little bit more. If what I would tell myself if I was just starting out, I think I would just tell myself that it's really not a huge risk, and that just growing as the practice grows is a perfectly acceptable way of practicing, and that I don't have to worry so much about marketing and really pushing the business and trying to make it into this big clinic right away, or even ever becoming a clinic in that way. I don't know if I actually ever want to manage a clinic. And so just like releasing that just first starting out person that had just graduated, I would just want to tell her that it's fine to just grow it as it grows. What's my last one here? I'm just going through the list of questions that we are going to try for this podcast. And the last question is, what advice would I give for the listeners? And I think it would just be to create a private practice that really matches who you actually are. And so doing the kind of work that you actually want to do and doing it in the way that you want to do it, and that you don't have to match any pre-made model or system. You don't have to have a clinic unless you want to. You don't have to practice in a community unless you want to. Heck, you don't even have to practice with clients face-to-face if you don't want to. And that these are all really feasible possibilities, really private practices that will make you the income that you want to do if that's what you want to do. And that there's really a lot of flexibility, but that's what this podcast is all about, is showing that flexibility and diversity in private practice. So that's the podcast interview questions that we have for now, but they will expand and switch with the interview ease that we have scheduled coming up. Some of them work in community development, and so their questions will be a lot different than the questions that I went through just now. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast, and we hope that you listen in next month. Please let us know if you want or need any other resources or practice tips. Those are the two other things that we're bringing out to you this year. Let us know. We really do want to hear from you. Please give us feedback on our resources and on our podcasts. We hope that you make a good day out there today, and we'll talk to you again next month.